Hello everybody and welcome to this video brought to you by the Intrepid St. Bonaventure University student-run online news source. My name is Jeff Uveino and joining me again today is Mike Hogan. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. So students have been at St. Bonaventure University for about a month now. That we're reaching October almost, and the university has only reported 7 positive cases of coronavirus. 4 of those cases being new as of yesterday, September 23rd. We've seen outbreaks at many campuses around the United States, but Bonaventure hasn't really had that problem. Mike, what do you know about the cases that the university reported yesterday, as well as what can you say that the university has been doing to kind of keep the pandemic in check, so to say?
Well, I have knowledge of what happened yesterday. They reported. I don't know if they reported the 4 new cases yesterday or not, or if that was last week. They wouldn't tell us when the students tested positive. But as we all know, St. Bonaventure has a new way of tracking the data. That's on the New York State Department of Health website. So we checked that. There were 4 new ones. And I wrote a story today. After listening to the town hall they had held with students last night, university administrators discussing COVID-19 concerns and questions, Dr. Marlene West-Smith, Medical Services Director at the Center for Student Wellness, said that the 4 cases, the students did not test positive in Cattaraugus County. So assuming those students tested positive were commuters, or maybe they're faculty members, maybe they're not students at all. So yeah, I guess that's good news. The university believes that these individuals weren't anywhere near campus or in Cattaraugus County when they tested positive. So that's really good. So St. Bonaventure, we're still doing well. So in terms of what we have here in this area, we have 0 active cases as a campus community and off campus as well. And that's just what we know. There could be people out there with the virus, carrying it. But of the students and faculty members, they've tested. They just started the random testing for students and faculty recently. So of the people they've tested, nobody has tested positive lately other than the 3 that they had already confirmed earlier in the semester and then before school started in August. So they're doing well, and what they're doing and why this is the case is, first of all, I think it's an obvious byproduct of being in an area where COVID isn't very relevant at all. I mean, there's only really 10 or 11 active cases last time I checked the Cattaraugus County totals. So that's a very, very good thing for the university, and that's a big reason why they're doing well. But another reason why I think it's working is because of the testing. They've tested us before we showed up. They've done a lot of athlete testing, and they've just started random testing. And that's something that not a lot of schools are doing. Some schools are doing it, but not all. And that's why you're seeing outbreaks because students aren't getting tested. There's no surveillance. They're not surveying. They're not really using a measuring stick at all to look at the situation and say, this is what we have. This is a situation. It's just blowing up all at once. That results in a shutdown. But I think overall their plan was really good. I think their execution of the plan has been really good. President DePiro has talked about that. He has been very public about how well the students have done, except for that one instance with the suspension, the party they had on campus at the Gardens. That was obviously a big mess for the university to have to clean up. But they took action. I agree. I reported with the about that, and I was I don't like to put my opinion too much into it, but I thought that was what they needed to do. They were very strict about that. So the execution of their plan has been good. When they've needed to punish people for acting out of line and not doing what they need to do to keep themselves and others safe, they've taken very serious action against those individuals. So yeah, I think it's a combination of different things. Being in an area where there's not a lot of virus, being vigilant about testing, and then the execution of the plan, social distancing, masks, like I said, punishing the people who act up and don't do what they need to do. And I also think in general, and this is kind of what I envisioned, I didn't think it would go this well right away. I thought that, there'd be quite a bit of cases. It doesn't matter where you are in the country, the virus is there. But I thought that because the student body is pretty small, just under, give or take 2,000 students total here, I thought that that was a good sign. So St. Bonaventure's in a good position because of a few things that they didn't have control of, like the virus in the county, the student body that they have, and then the things they can control is what the reopening plan they had.
Yeah, the university started by testing all of its student athletes, which is just over a quarter of the student population at the university. And now going forward, they've been testing 20 students per day, which equates to 100 students per week. So by the time we get to the end of the semester, just about every student that goes to Bonaventure is going to have been tested for COVID-19 a second time, as everybody had to submit a negative test before arriving to campus.
Yep, and they've said 50 to 60, they want to test 50 to 60% of students before, over the next 7 or 8 weeks. So that's a pretty good chunk of students. And then you consider all the athlete testing they're probably going to be doing. I heard something about how they're randomly testing a handful of people from the athletics teams each week. That's good. I think that we'll see those big rounds of testing again too. I don't have any confirmation on that, but I do think they'll do those 300 athletes at a time like they did at the beginning of September, especially as we get closer to the fall. I think it's going to be more or deeper into the fall, should I say. I think it's going to be more important to test as flu season comes head on with the coronavirus. I think it's going to be one of those things where if you have the flu symptoms, if you think you have the flu, then you're just going to automatically have to assume that you have COVID. I mean, you're going to have to go get tested either way.
And that's one of the luxuries that a small school has, is you can test a large portion of your students without having to use too many resources. I mean, if you were at a university that has 20 or maybe even 40,000 students, testing 20 a day isn't going to give you very much of a good gauge as about the virus's prevalence at your university. But since the university can test almost all of its students during the semester with only 20 a day, it's a great resource that you have. And I think the thing that's really important, you led off with it, being in the area that St. Bonaventure University is located. I mean, I'm not sure the population of Cattaraugus County. I believe it's about 50,000. We're in, if you'll call it the metro area here, with Olean on one side of the campus and Allegheny on the other. That area is about 20,000 combined. So really a much more favorable situation than if we're in a city where there are people are so on top of each other and highly concentrated. Now, I think that another reason that the university hasn't really seen some of the problems that others have is because students are taking the rules seriously. And I don't think my gist from the student body that I've gotten is that the student body thinks that the rules are fair. Nobody has, gone against the mask mandate or the social distancing rules. The one slip-ups have been with the gatherings rule, which still has been widely adhered to. But the student body is taking it seriously because they know that they have to in order to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think after the suspensions that they handed out to those 28 students for that party, I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people. I think, I know I was, but I was really waiting. And I don't know if you or not, I was really waiting for that one situation where the university would have to punish people for acting out of line. That was one of my burning questions all summer. What would the university do if people partied or if they caught people at big gatherings on campus or off campus? I think that was the message they sent to the students that day when they handed those suspensions out. That was like that was the message. That was the thing that woke everybody up and said, okay, well, we don't want to be those people. Look at those kids. I don't know what their punishments were, but they obviously were probably off campus for a decent amount of time, maybe a week or two. I'm assuming that they had a quarantine before they came back and maybe possibly get tested. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I think that I don't want to have to be sent home to quarantine for 14 days or, I've already, you already had to do the online class and figure that out the hard way in the spring last year when this whole thing started. So nobody wants to be those people who get suspended or, have to quarantine, whatever. So I think that was a really good, really not good. But you don't want that to happen. But there was a strong message that probably needed to be sent one way or the other. I think it was going to happen regardless. I think the university was going to come across a situation like that, and they did, and they made their message clear to the students, and and I think ever since people have been more vigilant.
I think that one of the main concerns of the students now that we've been here for a month and the virus has been mainly kept under control is that now that that's happened, can restrictions be eased? If they are, which would they be? What would that look like? I've gotten the sense that students want to be rewarded for playing by the university's rules.
Yeah, and I think they should, but I also think, and I had reported on something like this in a story I did at the beginning of the week about how we have had little cases. I almost think like you might want to, reward the students in some way, but you also kind of want to think about it this way. If it's working, why change anything? It's working for a reason, because the plan is good. It's working, so why change anything? That's kind of where I stand on that. But I think they could eventually, and they talked about this in the town hall, which the meeting that we had with students yesterday evening, and I listened to it. And the restrictions was a topic of discussion. Robbie Chulik, who's very involved with Res Life, I think he's the director of Res Life. He talked about that pretty extensively and said that for now, no restrictions will be loosened because everything's working. Kind of the same thing I just said there. But he said, in the future, if we do decide to look at the restrictions, it's going to be incremental. It's going to be small. It's not going to be large. I think mask wearing, face coverings, those are going to be big parts of the next semester as well. I don't think they're going to go away. I think you're still going to have to wear masks on campus no matter what, unless you're eating or in rare circumstances. You can take them off, but I think next semester won't look any different. I don't think the rest of the fall will look any different. The one thing I do think that could be loosened is, if I were a freshman right now living in the dorms, you're pretty restricted to hanging out with your roommate or people outside. It's going to start to get colder. Maybe they can start to have students hang out in the common areas and meet new. You have to imagine it's been hard to socialize as a freshman right now because, for us, for students who aren't freshmen, for sophomores, juniors, seniors, grad students, people, your friends, you have friends, your professors, this and that about the campus, but these freshmen have been very restricted to very, very little social life so far. And I would probably think that they would try to make efforts to make on-campus socialization, especially for the underclassmen, a little bit more easier.
It will be a fine line to walk between, do you ease restrictions as a reward, or do you keep them as they are because they've worked? And those are questions for administration. Those are questions that we don't have answers to. We don't need to have answers to. It's for the university administration.
And I think if you're going to loosen anything, you keep going this semester as it is, and the next semester, if things are better, if there's progress towards the vaccine, if there is a vaccine. And that's another thing. I almost think a lot of people are almost acting like next semester and everything is basically contingent on the vaccine. You don't even know if you're going to be able to get the vaccine if it comes out by November, December, or whenever the heck people are saying it's supposed to come out. That's going to be, I don't think most of the student bodies can have a vaccine next semester. And I think for the most part, it's going to look very similar. And if cases are declining, that's one thing. If the country, because I almost think St. Bonaventure, we're in an area of little prevalence with the virus, but I almost think they make their decision based off what's going on in the country as a whole. And I think that's a good thing because you'd rather be on the strict side of things than the lenient side of things. And that's, if you read about what's going on, what happened at SUNY Oneonta with what happened there, you read about the lack of preparedness, how underprepared they were, no testing, no surveillance, not a lot of rules. That's what St. Bonaventure has avoided because they've been strict.
So moving on to another main concern of a lot of people, that is athletics at St. Bonaventure. Fall sports have been practicing with increased precautions. I know that they have been broken up into smaller groups while they're practicing, masks at practice when appropriate. The big thing that's looming that we'd normally be gearing up right now is basketball season. The NCAA has said that men's and women's basketball can begin on November 5th, and practices can begin on October 14th, which is a 42-day window where teams can conduct a maximum of 30 practices. Now, we don't know yet if that is going to be the same when the time comes. Those rules could change, as we've seen for the entirety of the pandemic. It's a very fluid situation, and official decisions can change from day to day. So right now, it's really a waiting game, but the sense from the campus community is haven't been that worried yet, but when basketball season comes, which is a huge part, just not only for the spirit of the community and the surrounding area here, but for the economy as well. So, Mike, what do you think we can expect as far as another month down the road when basketball season is going to be in full swing?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. The NCAA is making all these decisions right now, and you're hearing about the practices, whatever, in November, and how the season can start at the end. If it does start in November, it's obviously going to happen without students on campus, and there's going to be no fan. I don't think there's going to be any fan at the start. I think St. Bonaventure is going to be careful with, and I can almost see if they do allow, and I'm just talking more about the fan perspective. I'll get to the basketball side a little bit, but if you're looking at the fan side of things, university has restrictions against visitors right now. There can't be anybody who doesn't have a reason. If you don't have a reason to be here, you can't be here, basically. If you're not a student, you don't have a P.O. box, all sorts of rules with visitors. So having fans at games would almost contradict that rule. So if you're going to look at having fans there, you'd almost want to do it like Notre Dame did it for football, or has been doing it for football. Students, faculty, staff, people who are supposed to be on campus can go to games, and you limit that crowd. I don't know what that would look like in the Riley Center, maybe 1,000, 2,000 fans, but I don't know what that would look like at all. And obviously the media is, we're probably allowed to go to the games. But I think with fans, you can maybe start to expect something like that.
It'll also be contingent on the state's decisions. I mean, there's no uniformity right now from state to state. We've seen in pro sports, you've got some states that are letting people into the buildings, into the arenas, the stadiums, some states where it's zero tolerance. You can't have anybody there other than necessary personnel. So that'll depend a lot on New York State. But then also, I think that each university, if New York State gives the green light, it'll also be up to each university. Some will want to be more cautious than others because it's really a case-by-case basis.
In that circumstance, too, if the state does end up allowing fans to go to games, and we're going to see it eventually, I think, with the Buffalo Bills, and I think that's going to give everybody a good sense of what you can do with fans in the stands in New York. But if it does come to that, the university is going to make a decision, and if I were making a good guess, I think that students would be allowed to go to the games because they're here, they're getting tested. You know what kind of prevalence the virus on campus. You don't want outsiders coming into campus bringing the virus with them. That's a concern of the universities. But if we're transitioning to the basketball side of things, the actual basketball games being played, practices starting, I think the NCAA came up with that decision you finally have a plan. The players and coaches finally can start to look forward to something. If games are played in November, at the end of November, we don't know yet. There's probably going to be some sort of scheduling rearranging going on, which has already started in a little bit for St. Bonaventure. That tournament that they're playing in got moved to D.C., or that was at least the rumor. But, if we're looking at the basketball side, they finally have a plan in front of them. They know that games could potentially be played at the end of November. They can start practicing soon. And maybe if things aren't going well, if there's a lot of COVID cases, if cases are spiking within programs or around the country, then maybe they push it back to January. But I think eventually you will see college basketball, whether that be in November or later on.
And the NCAA came right out and said that their reasoning for moving basketball back to when they did was that about 75% of institutions would either be done with the semester or completely online by then. And St. Bonaventure included. November 27th is Thanksgiving, and after that, students will be home. The finals are going to be online at Bonaventure, and students will not return until the third or fourth week of January, which gives you a huge window to play games on all these campuses where there aren't people there other than the teams, other than the athletes and coaches, which is really smart in my opinion, and I know that you agree. And that's going to be something that, do they move the games up so that they can play as many as possible while there aren't as many people on campuses, or do you keep your conference slate the same? Now, I mean, like I said, it's going to depend a lot on what the states decide, and every conference has interstate travel.
Yeah, and for the season to start in November, and I think you made a great point about maybe cramming in games in that time frame when the students are gone. I think that's a great idea. I think I could easily see that. But for games to start on time when the NCAA is kind of put that, end of November date in. I think it almost depends on what happens before that. If there's a lot of COVID cases going around on these campuses before the season starts, maybe they push it a little bit in December, but that would still allow them to play these games in these campuses without worrying about the players being exposed to other students, or students, being exposed to these players who could be traveling all around the country.
And we could see a very different postseason and championship season that we've seen in the past. Obviously, some professional sports leagues have adjusted their postseasons to account for the pandemic, and so we could see that for college basketball as well. Right now, we just don't know it, but I just think the main concern of a lot of people, and this has been a theme of all sports, is they just want the Bonnies to be playing.
Yeah.
They want to be able to watch them on TV.
It gives the student body, this fall has been tough. There hasn't been soccer. There hasn't been, all these fall sports that, people look forward to watching. And it's been a while for basketball. I mean, basketball probably hasn't been on the minds of many since March. That ended abruptly. And now that there's finally a little bit of a plan, it gives people something to look forward to. And if games do start when they're supposed to in November, that's great. Bonnies fans especially, very passionate people, have something to have, and students too, have something to take pride in and watch. And who knows how it's going to work. I'm starting to think a little bit about the media perspective here. How will the A10 tournament look? A lot of us like to travel for that. Is that going to be something that we're going to be able to do? We don't know. A lot of the coverage this year, we'll probably get to cover home games, and spaced out press row or whatever. But, the A10 tournament, that's something that's on my mind. Was that something we'll be able to do this year, or we have to watch from home and do the interviews after the game over Zoom? We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainties about the spring, but now there's finally a plan in place for basketball, encouraging for a lot of people. People can finally start to look forward to it.
Yeah, and we're hoping that as far as media access in the Riley Center specifically, if you're not allowing fans, or even if you're allowing a minuscule amount of fans, there will be room for all the media members to social distance in the 5,800-seat Riley Center.
There's never a lot of room to distance yourself on the small amount of press row tables they have. But yeah, I could almost see myself sitting in the stands and with a computer. Maybe they'll put us up on that the hall, the walkway. Yeah, like that. That would be like they did last year for the couple games. That was pretty uncomfortable. But I could see something like that. I think the media will be there. I mean, if you're looking at what's going on with professional sports, media has been allowed to go to games. So I think, we'll be able to get that experience this year in the Riley Center, but don't know about the spring for the tournaments and everything else.
We're looking forward to media opportunities, not only covering games, but also giving everybody a sense of what the Bonnie team is going to look like this year. All of our preview stuff normally would be coming up soon. I'm assuming that'll be pushed back, but still we're looking forward to doing our usual fall cycle of Bonnie basketball previews of the men's and women's team. We'll have all of our player features and our team previews on the Intrepid, and we're looking forward to getting you guys that. So thank you, everybody, again for tuning in. Mike, thanks for joining me again.
Awesome to be on.
And thank you for watching The Intrepid. You can check out this video on The Intrepid's YouTube page. You can find us on Twitter at Intrepid SBU. You can also find us on Facebook. We are titled The Intrepid. And make sure to check out intrepidsbu.com for all of your news, sports, and entertainment news at St. Bonaventure University. Thank you.